Welcome back. In this video, we will have a look at dialogues that pops up on the screen for Flutter. So the very first one that I'm going to start off with is called a SnackBar. Now, before we start, just go and create a new project folder. I created a new one. It's got Run App there, running My App. My App is a state list widget. It's got a material app and the main page. The main page is a state full widget so that we can make some changes on the screen. It starts off with a scaffold. I've got a center widget as the body, which has got a column. The main axis alignment is in the center, so we see the button in the center. And this center widget will place your column also in the center. And the children will be just an elevated button for now, which we will do something as soon as we click on the save button. Okay, so the first thing that we will do in this video is to quickly have a look at what is a SnackBar. So a SnackBar is that small little pop-up that comes from the bottom. So we will see that now in action. So let's start creating our SnackBar. So I'm going to have a declaration for my SnackBar before I want to actually show it. So I'm going to have it inside of this state class, but just outside of the build. So I'm going to say final SnackBar, just a variable, SnackBar, equals, and I'm going to use the SnackBar class. So there's a SnackBar class that looks like this, and we will look at how we can style this SnackBar. So if you hover over it, that you can see that there's a name parameter. Content is required, but there's no corresponding argument because we did not add the content yet. So if you look at it, it's got a key, it's got content, and that's basically just the text or whatever you want to show to the user, and you can add an icon first and then some text. It's up to you, so you can have a row there. There's a background color, there's an elevation, there's margin, padding, width, there's a shape that you can set. We've done shape a lot. There's behavior, there's actions. We'll look at action also. There's a duration, which we'll look at. There's animations, and there's a function also that you can call. So for now, we're going to look at content quickly. So let's add the content there, and the content I want to add will just be some normal text. So let's say this is a save button that you click, and you click on it, and you can maybe show the message successfully saved. Now, in order for me to show this SnackBar, I can go into the onPressed of this button, and we can call scaffold messenger. You can use the scaffold messenger class, put the dot of context, the context which is the current build context for this build method, that context there. So you can see it's the same context it's using at the top. And then I'm going to use show the SnackBar. And then I need to specify which SnackBar I want to show. So if you've got different SnackBars, you can show different ones. Obviously, one SnackBar per line. Okay, so I'm going to have the scaffold messenger of context.show SnackBar, and I pass in the SnackBar that I created. So if we save this now, and I click on save, you can see that the SnackBar pops up at the bottom. So it's just a simple message coming from the bottom that says successfully saved. Now, there's a few changes that we can make here, and because I placed this outside of my build method here or function here, I will need to rerun this every time we create the SnackBar or make changes to the SnackBar. Okay, so in the SnackBar, you can see we've got the content, so we can also change the color. So I can say change the background color to colors.red, for example, and if I rerun this now and click on save, I will get a red one popping up. So you can change the background color. You can also change the duration. So for the duration, you can just use a normal duration class. If you hover over it, you can see it uses the duration class, and it defaults to 4 seconds. So if you want to make this another duration, for example, you can use milliseconds, microseconds, seconds, minutes, hours. Obviously, you don't want to have this shown a long time. It should be a few seconds. So I'm going to specify seconds there and maybe just go to 1 second. So if you just want to quickly show, successfully saved, and then it's done. I just need to rerun this quickly. Okay, so if I click on save, successfully saved, and then it's done. So it depends on how long you want to have that shown on the screen, and you can set that by playing around with these values. Just again, because it's outside of the build, that's why I need to rerun the whole time. Okay, so if I click save, successfully saved for 2 seconds, and then it will close down. Okay, and then something else that's also very helpful is the action that you can also add. So if you hover over the action property, you'll see it's a SnackBar action. So we're going to use the class SnackBar action, use the constructor there. And for the SnackBar action, we can set the text color, we can set the disabled text color, we can set a label and onPressed. And you can see the label and onPressed is required. So we'll need to add those two. So let's go to onPressed and just use normal method there, function there. And let's go to the label. And if you hover over the label, you'll see it's a string. It's not a widget. So you need to add the text there. So the text for this could be something like undo or whatever you wanted to do. And if we save it now and rerun, you can see the action pops up on the right-hand side. So there's your action, there's your successfully saved, and then you can maybe say undo there. And clicking on that will then also do something for you in the onPressed. So whatever you want to do then, when that gets clicked, will be handled inside of this onPressed. Now also for the SnackBar action, so it's a label and onPressed that must be there. You can also change the text color. You see now it was a blue there, so you can change the text color there also if you want. Right, and that is the basics for your SnackBar, just a simple message that pops up from the bottom of the screen to show a specific message. Just going to take you back again. Remember, for the SnackBar, you've got a shape, so you can change the shape also to a rounded rectangle, border, or whatever you want to do there, and change the shape of it. Right, that's then it for your SnackBar. So let's carry on and do something else. So there's an elevated button. We use this now for the SnackBar. So I'm going to create another elevated button here. Maybe add some space between them. So let's use a sized box for that. And let's set the height to 10, just to open up some space between the two. Okay, I can maybe make it a bit less. Let's make it 5. Okay. Now for this elevated button, we will do something else in the onPressed, and we will have this one delete, and maybe we can have the style changed a bit. So let's go to elevated button dot style from, and we set the primary color to colors dot red, so that we've got a red delete button. Okay, now inside of the onPressed, what I want to do now is to show up a dialog to basically just ask the user, are you sure that you want to delete? Yes or no? Right, so in order to do that, we use a function called show dialog. Now this show dialog, I'm just going to remove these. That was created automatically. Just remember your semicolon at the end. So if you hover over it, you will see that it needs something right at the bottom. The name parameter builder is required, but there's no corresponding argument, and also the parameter context is required. So let's look at those quickly. So firstly, the context will be the build context that we're currently in, and we can just pass in that context. So you can see it picks up automatically. You can just have your context there. Then also we need to have a builder. So let's add the builder. Just keep your cursor there, and you can see that you can either use the fat arrow if it's only one thing you want to do. Otherwise, we can go into the brackets. So now it's got its own context there, and that context is now the context of the show dialog. So basically, it's the dialog that pops up. And if you look at this builder, it's got a function that must return back a widget. So it's a build context for the show dialog, and it must return back a widget that it needs to show. So the widget that we will return back, so it needs a return statement, and you can see it will give you an error there without a return statement. So we will need to say return something, and it needs to return a widget. In our case, we want to return back an alert dialog. Now you can just close that off, and now you can see everything is fine. It doesn't have a problem anymore, and if I click on delete, something popped up because now the whole screen is grayed out. And if I click again, so you can see already it pops up, but it's not something useful yet. So the alert dialog, then you can see there's a lot of things that you can set for this alert dialog, and we will go through some of them now. So for this alert dialog, let's start off with a title. And I'm going to set the title as a normal text widget, so you can see the title property takes in any widget. Okay, so you can add an icon there in a row with some text or whatever you want to do. For now, I'm just going to say delete entry, and I'm just going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just to make sure. Do we want to delete that entry? So if I click on delete, you can see delete entry 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that is the title that pops up. Okay, now let's go to the next one, the content of it. And you can see the content is also just a widget. So you can have text, you can have whatever you want there. So maybe say the content, are you sure that you want to delete the entry? So if we save it now, we click on delete entry, are you sure that you want to delete the entry? So now it seems to look something more like a dialog that actually pops up that you want to do something with. So you can also just use this to actually display something, and you can see it's dismissible by just clicking on the side. So if I click there and I click on the side, it's dismissible, but you can also change that. And as soon as we've got the buttons on it, then we can maybe change that dismissible also. So another thing that your alert dialog has is it's got these actions there, which is a list of widgets. And this is the thing that actually makes this work quite nice. So let's add the actions there, and that's just a list of widgets. So for the actions, we will normally use buttons in here. So I'm going to use a simple text button. So we've done buttons in the previous video, so go and have a look at that again if you want to get a bit more into the buttons, but very easy to do. So let's have the child for this text button as a normal text widget that will just say no. The button must also have an on pressed, and if I save it now, if I click on it, you will see the no button there. Okay, so this is the first action that we're going to do. Do you want to delete, no, or yes? Right, so let's do the other button also quickly. Copy that, paste it again, and let's set this one to yes, we want to delete. So now if we click on delete, it opens up no and yes, and we are able to handle something when the yes or the no gets clicked. Okay, so currently nothing happens when I click. And normally when you click, you need to dismiss this whole dialog. So in order to dismiss the dialog, something that you'll need to do in these on-pressed will just be to call the navigator again. And you will remember the navigator in the drawer video that I did. So it's going to be navigator.pop. And we're going to pop the context, and you'll see the context is in fact the builder's context. So you're popping off the dialog from the screen. So if I say navigator.pop the context, if I click on delete, you see I've added it at no. So if I click yes, nothing will happen. But if I click no, it will take away the dialog. So now we can do exactly the same thing in the on-pressed of your other button so that we can actually dismiss it. And then for your alert dialog, there's not for the alert dialog, let's go to show dialog. There's a barrier dismissible, and you can hover over it. You can see it needs a Boolean. So default, it's false. It is true default. So if you want to have it not dismissible, then you'll set it to false. So now if I click on the sides, you cannot dismiss this. So that's where you set the barrier dismissible to false so that you cannot close the dialog by clicking on the side. You need to choose one of the options. So if I click no now, it dismisses it, and yes, it dismisses it. So it stops the functionality of your application until you have decided or made your choice. Right, so underneath this elevated button, I'm just going to have a normal text widget so that we can see the choice that we actually made there. And let's make this, let's set up a variable at the top somewhere that we can use. So we will say string, let's call it delete, equals, and let's just make there, or say something like no choice made. That when it starts, the text will show no choice made. So the text there will be that delete text. And then inside of this onPressed, we can then set the state for that delete text to be you selected no. And then inside of this one, we can have the same thing. We can say set state delete equals you said or you selected yes. Okay, let's see if that works. No choice made. Click on delete. No, you selected no. Click on yes, you selected yes. Okay, so that is your basic alert dialog that uses the show dialog function there to start showing your dialog. Okay, that's just the basics. Now for your alert dialog, you can also go and play around with, for example, the shape. So we can add a shape for this, and we've done this shape a lot now, and that's the rounded rectangle border, which is, yeah, it rounds off everything quite nicely. So that's why we use it this much. So I'm going to use a border radius again, and you can go to the border radius and maybe use circular, and we can maybe use a 20 there, which will make everything a bit more rounded corners. So let's try that again. Click on delete, and you can see your corners is a bit more rounded. And you can also add a side there, for example, and add you can see there, just use a border side. So let's use border side. And if you hover over it, you can give it a style to be solid. There's a width and a color. So we can have, let's say the color is colors.red to go extreme. And let's set the width to be 2 so we can actually see it nicely. Okay, so if we run this again, you've got a red outline. Okay, so you can go and change this as you like. So you can change the shape of this thing, and you can also create your own shapes if you want to go into that a bit later. Okay, so that is your normal show dialog with showing just an alert dialog. So we've done the snack bar, and we've done the alert dialog that pops up, that gives you a choice. And remember, these buttons, you can also format it. I just use text buttons because that's normally how it functions. Right, so this one is the alert dialog. So let's go and create something similar now. So after this, let me just take that same button that we've got here at the top. Let's take this one, and I'm going to go right at the bottom, and let's create a simple dialog now. So we've done the alert dialog, and there's also a simple dialog. Okay, so for the elevated button, I'm not going to use that line, but we can maybe have something like choose location. And maybe we'll have a text widget underneath it, like we did there, to actually also show the choice that you made. But instead of delete, let's have something else there at the top. Let's say string location equals none selected yet. And let's use location there. Okay, so this dialog will work a bit differently because we need to wait for data that comes back from that dialog. And that's in the form of some text that we will get back. So in order to do that, we will have a final string. Let's call it the LOC for the location. I don't want to name it the same as I've got that variable there because then it will become confusing. Just add some space here so we can see what we're typing. Now, to get back the type, we're going to use a show dialog again. So exactly the same as we did previously. We need to have a context. We need to have a builder. And I will need to call show dialog. So show dialog needs a context again, and the context will just be the build context. We will also need a builder, and for the builder, make sure you choose that. Now, if I hover over this, you can see that it says the value of future dynamic can't be assigned to a variable of type string. Try changing the type of the variable or casting the right-hand side to a string. So what happens now is this dialog of ours will send back a normal value. So what is the difference between this one now and the show dialog we had here? This show dialog had a button with an on pressed that handled the on click for you. So we did not send anything back using the show dialog. We just did something in it. Whereas for this one, we will be sending something back, and we don't know how long that's going to take, and that's why it gives us the problem here. And please go and have a look at my video where I explain how futures work. So I'll place the video in a link now that you can go and have a look at again, just to make sure that you understand a future. So basically what this show dialog is returning, if you go back, it returns a future dynamic. So it's returning some value that you will specify. Dynamic just means it can contain any type of data type there that you're returning. And it's a promise of that thing that gets returned. So this show dialog will send back a future value for me. That future value is just a promise that we will actually get something back. So in order to do this, we'll need to add the await keyword there so that we can start waiting for that user to make the decision before we save something into this into this location variable. But in order to use await, your method must have the keyword async in it. So it's asynchronous, and we are waiting for a future value from the show dialog. And that future value depends on how long the user will take to make the selection. Right, so now this show dialog, as you know, it needs to return something, and that normally returns a widget. So I'm just going to save this now to make sure that everything is nice. And that will give you a problem in the builder unless you go and change the return statement. Right, so we're going to return back a simple dialog. And now you can see the error is gone because we are returning back. If you have a look at the builder again, we need to return back a widget. And in this case, the widget is a simple dialog. Okay, now for the simple dialog, I'm going to have a title there, and the title will just be normal text, and the text will be something like choose your location. Then if you hover over your simple dialog, you can also see it's got a list of children or list of widgets that's called children. So we're going to make use of that in order to display some choices to the user. So we need to make some location choices for him here. So in the children, I'm going to use a simple dialog option. Now this simple dialog option, if you go into it, hover over it, you can see it's got a key, it's got an onPressed, and it's got a child. Okay, so let's go to the onPressed and just keep it there. We'll get back to it now. And then also as part of this, we'll need to have a child. And normally what we do here is to just have a normal text widget with the choice that you're going to make. So let's have the first one as South Africa. And we save it. And I'm going to take this one as a simple dialog option. And I'm just going to add, let's say, another 2 choices. I'm not going to make this one too big. Let's say South Africa, America, and let's say Brazil, and save it. Now let's look at choose location now. So now you can see we can choose the location between one of these options, and you can see I can click on them. They are clickable. So I can make choices when I click on any one of these. Okay, you can see it's still dismissible. So if you want to have that not dismissible, you will go to your show dialog and use that barrier dismissible and set it to false. So great, it is popping up, but now we need to take that option that the user has chosen and we want to display it there on none selected yet. Okay, so we called that piece of text there location, and that's the one we want to change. So you can see that we've got these, go down, we've got the onPressed there. So in order to send something back now to this location that we want to use, we're going to use the following. We're going to say navigator.pop again, and we're going to use the context. So by just saying navigator.pop like we have it there, it will just basically now for, let's see, the first one is South Africa. So which means that if I click on South Africa, it will just close the dialog. But with this pop, you can also see that it's got a second argument that's the result. And it can be a list of basically anything that you're returning. So if you're returning only one value, then it's only one value returning. But you can return basically a list of items there. And it could be of any type. So the one that I'm going to return here is, let's say, South Africa now for this one. And I'm going to take that same navigator.pop and I'm going to use it here. But instead of saying South Africa now, I will say for this one, it will be America. And for this one, it will be Brazil. Okay, so what will happen now is as soon as you make the selection there, South Africa or America or Brazil, it will send back that value and save it into this final string called loc or location. And then after this show dialog, I can then go and use the set state and I can go and change my location and I can set the location to that loc value that was returned back. Now, if I save this now, let's see if it works. Click on it, click on South Africa, click on America, or click on Brazil. Right, so obviously you could have used this set state also inside of these onPressed. So I just wanted to show you how you can also get a value back from a show dialog into a specific variable that you can use later on. So just be reminded that this await there basically stops your coding from executing from this line. It will stop until it's done, and then it will go to set state. So the thing that makes us wait here is how long it takes the user to actually make one of these selections. So it could be a second, maybe it could be a bit more, but you need to wait for that decision made by the user in order to go and then set the state at the end. Right, so now for the last one, we will have a look at another elevated button at the bottom to do our last part. So let's add this button, and I'm just going to remove this line there. So for the last part of this video, we will have a look at the bottom sheet. So like your snack bar, like this one that pops up from the bottom, you can also have your own bottom sheet popping up with some choices or whatever you want to have contained in it. So in order to do your bottom sheet, what we will need to do at the top is to add a key again. So you'll remember the same thing we had with the drawer, that we had to set up a key at the top if we wanted to open or close that drawer. So we will need to do something similar. So we're going to have a global key again declared at the top. So it's going to be global key. It's going to be of type scaffold state. It's exactly the same as your drawer. We're going to have a scaffold key, and it's going to be a global key. And for the scaffold then, in the key property, we can go and place this scaffold key. So we'll need the scaffold key to get the context of the scaffold in order to start showing your bottom sheet. Right, now for this elevated button, as soon as we press it, so let's call this one bottom sheet. Save it. Okay, there we've got the button. Okay, so in order for us to open up the bottom sheet, and the bottom sheet is normally a container with a height and a width, and that you can set the background color with, and you can style it and so forth. So in order to open up this bottom sheet, we're going to go to the scaffold key. We're going to call the current state. And then on the current state, we're going to call show bottom sheet. Now I'm going to remove this null and the fat arrow and just have normal brackets there, and let's end off. Now inside of this context, I'm just going to return, or inside of these brackets, I'm just going to return back a container, and that will take away the error. So you need to return back something that will be your bottom sheet. So we will start off with a container because you can set the height and the width of a container and you can style it nicely. Now another problem we've got here is that it says at the bottom, the method show bottom sheet can't be unconditionally invoked because the receiver cannot be null. Try making the call condition using nullable, or just say it will never be null. So on the current state is where we've got the problem actually. So let's just add that the current state can actually be null, although it should not be, but it can be null, and so we make it nullable, and then we can start showing the bottom sheet. So for this container then, we can set the height. Let's set the height as 110, and let's save this quickly. Now let's click on the bottom sheet there. Now obviously because it's white, we won't really see anything. So let's go and add some decoration for this one. So we're going to go with decoration, just a normal box decoration. And remember, you can set the color for the container, but you cannot have a color and a box decoration. So rather do the box decoration, and then you can set the color inside of the box decoration. Now for the color, let's go with colors.red. Let's go big here. So let's click on bottom sheet, and there you can see it pops up from the bottom. It's just basically like your snack bar, but you can see it's not dismissing. So you can keep it open as long as you want. Okay, so let's carry on. For the box decoration, let's also give it, let's say, a border radius if you wanted to. And we can have a border radius. Now, normally we would say border radius dot circular, but there's more options than just circular. So let's go with only. So let's say you only want to style the top corners instead of all four corners. So I'm going to go with only, and I just add a comma at the end. And for this only, I'm going to have a top left, and let's use radius.circular, and let's make it 10. And then the same for the top right, we can set the radius.circular to a 10. And now let's save this quickly. Click it again, and you can see we've got some rounded corners there. Right, so it's up to you. We can maybe make that a bit, let me just see, 20. Yeah, it's up to you. We can maybe make it 20 there. Okay, so then you've got some rounded borders there. And remember the height. You can set the height a bit bigger if you want to have it go up until there. So it goes over everything else on the screen. Okay, so for this is the most basic part of a bottom sheet. Just have a container with a height and do some decoration with it. And then you get your bottom sheet. Okay, now for a container, obviously, we have a child. So for the child, let's start off with a column. Let's maybe wrap this column also with a center widget so that we know that it's in the center. Okay, and then we will have some children, and let's save. Okay, so now as part of the children inside of this column, let's have a text widget there. So remember, you can add anything now in here. It's like designing your own screen there at the bottom for this thing that pops up. You can do anything there. So we'll have the text there that says something like, are you sure you want to delete? Obviously, I would rather use maybe a dialog for this, but just to give us some information there at the bottom. So if we run it again, you can see, are you sure you want to delete? So maybe on this container also, or on the column, let's add some padding. So you get some space there at the top, and we can maybe make it 12. Okay. Are you sure you want to delete? And maybe let's style this text to have a colors.white. Let's also make the font size a bit bigger. So I'm going to go with font size of, let's try at 25. Okay, that could work. And let's go after this text. Let's go with the button bar. Let's set the alignment for the button bar to be main axis alignment.center. And let's set a text button there with a child. That will be just a normal text widget. This button bar, text button. Let's just remove this, cut it out. We need to have the children there and then add the text button. Okay, or the button bar. So let's save again. So just make sure you, in the button bar inside of children, we've got this text button. Okay, for the style, let's set the color of, let's say colors.white. And let's also set the font size to be a 25. So let's see if that works. Okay, so you can see it's cut off at the bottom, so probably we'll need to make our container a bit higher. So let's try 120. Yeah, that will work. So 120 then, so we will have a yes there inside of this button bar, and I'm going to copy that text button again, and let's have the same one. This one will say no. Let's save. Let's run this again. Okay, so are you sure you want to delete, yes or no? Right, and now we can handle these two clicks also. So if you go into the on pressed for clicking no, you can maybe go and add some other text also there. So right at the bottom, let's add some text property there. And let's set the text there to something that we will set at the top. So at the top, let's have a string bottom sheet value, and we can just say nothing selected. Okay, let's go to the bottom, and we have the text there, bottom sheet val. So if we save it, nothing selected. And now if we click on yes, let's go into that part, we can then go and set the state, and we can set that bottom sheet value to, this one is yes, so we can set it to yes. And then if we go into this one, we can do the same. But I think what we can also do is to make sure that this thing closes now when we click on yes or no. So just at the bottom there, navigator.pop, and pass in the context, and that's all that's needed. So I'm going to take this whole thing, set state plus the navigator pop, and I'm going to place it inside of this on pressed, and this one will just set the value to no. So let's save this and see how it works now. So I'm going to click on bottom sheet. Yes is selected. Bottom sheet again. No is selected. And that is basically all then for this video. So we've looked at the SnackBar. That's just a quick message coming up from the bottom. So if you want to have a message like that with just one action there, quite nice to do. We've got delete, or the alert dialog that pops up, that you can have some buttons at the bottom and make some choices by just, are you sure you want to delete, or something like that? Are you sure you want to save? And then there's something that you can make a choice with the dialog. So this is just a simple dialog with some simple dialog options. And then you've got your bottom sheet where you can literally do anything at this bottom. And some people even take it as high up as there and show a lot of information that you can choose from. So this one is up to your own imagination on what you can do with this bottom sheet. So you can see I can even drag it up and down. So for the bottom sheet, it comes up, I can drag it down to dismiss it, or I can use one of the buttons. Thank you very much for watching this video. See you in the next one.